The champagne glasses clinked around me, laughter filled the air, and my brother Marcus stood at the center of it all, beaming in his cap and gown. But as I scanned the elegantly decorated backyard, searching for my place at the family table, I realized there wasn't one. Not a single chair had my name on it. 23 years of being his sister, and somehow I'd become invisible on his biggest day. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. That's when Admiral Patricia Hawthorne walked up to my parents and asked the question that changed everything. Where's Captain Rodriguez? The morning had started like any other Saturday in San Diego. I was in my apartment, polishing my Navy dress uniform for what I thought would be a routine family gathering. Marcus had just graduated from UC Berkeley with his MBA, and Mom had been planning this celebration for months. She'd mentioned it was going to be intimate, just family and close friends, but I figured that was her way of keeping costs down. I'd been stationed at Naval Base San Diego for the past 2 years, working as a logistics coordinator. It wasn't the most glamorous position, but I took pride in my work. Every supply chain I managed, every shipment I coordinated, every deadline I met, it all mattered. The Navy had given me structure, purpose, and a sense of belonging I'd never quite found at home. Growing up, Marcus had always been the golden child. While I was getting detention for talking back to teachers, he was winning academic awards. While I was struggling through community college, unsure of my direction, he was fast-tracking through his undergraduate degree. When I finally found my calling in the military, my parents seemed to view it as settling for second best, rather than finding my true path. The drive to my parents' house in Coronado took me through familiar neighborhoods where I'd spent my childhood. The same palm trees lined the streets, the same Spanish-style houses with their red tile roofs stood proudly behind manicured lawns. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the weight of my uniform, or maybe it was the realization that I'd been away long enough to see things with fresh eyes. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 2 p.m., 30 minutes before the party was scheduled to begin. My parents' house looked transformed. White tents had been set up in the backyard. Round tables with crisp linens were arranged perfectly, and strings of lights created an elegant ambiance even in the afternoon sun. Mom had outdone herself. "Sarah!" Marcus called out as I walked through the side gate. He was adjusting his tie, looking every bit the successful graduate he was. "You made it!" We hugged, and for a moment it felt like old times. Just 2 siblings celebrating a milestone, but as I looked around at the setup I started counting. 8 tables, each with place cards carefully arranged. I could see names I recognized. Aunts, uncles, family friends, Marcus's college roommates who'd flown in from various cities. "This looks incredible," I said, genuinely impressed. "Mom really went all out." "She's been planning this for months," Marcus replied, straightening his graduation cap. "You know how she gets with these things. Every detail has to be perfect." That's when I noticed Admiral Hawthorne arriving through the front gate. She was unmistakable in her dress uniform, the gold braiding on her sleeves catching the afternoon light. I'd met her once before at a Navy event, but I was surprised to see her here. She was a legend in the service, one of the few women to reach such a high rank in her generation. "Is that Admiral Hawthorne?" I asked Marcus. He looked confused for a moment. "I'm not sure. Mom invited some of Dad's business associates. You know how these things go." But I knew exactly who she was. Admiral Patricia Hawthorne had been the first woman to command a carrier strike group in the Pacific Fleet. She'd broken barriers that most people couldn't even imagine existed. What was she doing at my brother's graduation party? As more guests arrived, I started to feel increasingly out of place. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Conversations flowed easily between family members and friends who'd clearly been part of Marcus's journey. Meanwhile, I stood awkwardly in my uniform, wondering if I was overdressed or if everyone else was underdressed. Mom appeared at my elbow, looking radiant in a navy blue dress that complemented the party's color scheme. "Sarah, honey, you look beautiful. Thank you for coming." "Of course, Mom. I wouldn't miss Marcus's big day." She squeezed my arm and then was gone, whisked away by the demands of hosting. I watched her move through the crowd with practiced ease, making sure every guest felt welcomed and every detail was perfect. The ceremony began with Dad giving a speech about Marcus's achievements. He spoke about persistence, about following your dreams, about the importance of education. As he listed Marcus's accomplishments, Dean's List, internship at Goldman Sachs, job offer from a prestigious consulting firm, I felt both proud of my brother and acutely aware of how different our paths had been. When it came time for dinner, guests began finding their seats. I walked from table to table, looking for my name card. Table 1 was for immediate family. I could see Mom, Dad, and Marcus's spots, along with my grandparents and a few aunts and uncles. But no Sarah Rodriguez. Table 2 was for Marcus's friends from college. Table 3 was for extended family and family friends. Tables 4 through 8 were filled with business associates, neighbors, and other guests I barely recognized. I made another round, thinking maybe I'd missed it. But there was no mistake. Somehow, in all the meticulous planning, I'd been forgotten. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in my dress uniform, surrounded by celebration, feeling more alone than I had in years. Part of me wanted to leave quietly, to slip away before anyone noticed. But another part of me, the part that had been trained to face challenges head-on, refused to back down. That's when I saw Admiral Hawthorne approaching my parents' table. She moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command, her uniform impeccable, her bearing unmistakably military. As she reached the table, I was close enough to hear her speak. "Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez," she said, her voice carrying the authority of her rank, "this is a lovely celebration. But I have to ask, where's Captain Rodriguez?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. My parents looked confused, exchanging glances as if trying to solve a puzzle they didn't understand. "I'm sorry, Admiral," my father said, standing respectfully. "I'm not sure I follow. Are you looking for someone specific?" Admiral Hawthorne's expression remained steady, but I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of disappointment that she quickly masked. "Your daughter, Sarah, Captain Sarah Rodriguez. I came here specifically to congratulate her on her recent promotion." The words hit me like lightning. Promotion? What promotion? I was still a lieutenant, had been for 2 years. There must be some mistake. But as Admiral Hawthorne continued speaking, the pieces began falling into place. Her commanding officer recommended her for early advancement based on her exceptional performance in logistics coordination. The promotion was approved last week. I thought her family would be celebrating both children today. My parents' faces went through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, and then something that looked like panic. They'd organized this entire elaborate celebration without even knowing that their daughter had been promoted to captain in the United States Navy. The silence stretched uncomfortably as other guests began to take notice of the conversation. I could feel eyes turning toward us, could sense the shift in the party's atmosphere. We didn't know," my mother finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah didn't mention." But that wasn't true, and we all knew it. I had tried to tell them about my career, about the challenges I was facing, about the recognition I was receiving. But every conversation seemed to drift back to Marcus's achievements, to his next milestone, to his bright future. Admiral Hawthorne's gaze swept the crowd until it found me standing at the edge of the gathering. When our eyes met, she nodded slightly, a gesture of recognition that felt like a lifeline. "There she is," the Admiral said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet backyard. "Captain Rodriguez." The weight of Admiral Hawthorne's words settled over the party like a heavy blanket. Captain Rodriguez. The title felt surreal, even though I'd been living with the knowledge of my impending promotion for weeks. What I hadn't expected was for it to become public knowledge at my brother's graduation party. Admiral Hawthorne walked directly toward me, her stride purposeful and commanding. The crowd parted naturally, creating a clear path between us. I could feel my heart hammering against my chest, not from fear, but from the sudden realization that this moment was about to change everything. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she said as she approached, then corrected herself with a slight smile. "My apologies, Captain Rodriguez. Congratulations on your promotion." The formal handshake she offered felt like an anchor in the storm of confusion swirling around me. Her grip was firm, confident, and somehow reassuring. "Thank you, Admiral. I'm honored." "The honor is mine, Captain. Your work on the Pacific Fleet supply chain optimization has been nothing short of exceptional. Admiral Chen specifically requested that I personally deliver your promotion certificate." She reached into her jacket and produced an official Navy document. The seal was crisp, the paper heavy with importance. As she handed it to me, I caught a glimpse of the signatures, including one from the Secretary of the Navy himself. "This promotion comes with new responsibilities," Admiral Hawthorne continued, her voice carrying across the now silent backyard. "You'll be taking command of the Logistics Division at Pearl Harbor. It's a critical position, Captain. The entire Pacific Fleet's operational readiness depends on the efficiency of that department." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. Pearl Harbor. The words hit me like a physical force. I dreamed of serving there since I was a child, fascinated by the history and the strategic importance of the base. But I'd never imagined it would happen this way, announced in front of my family, who seemed to be hearing about my career for the first time. Marcus stepped forward, his graduation cap slightly askew. "Sarah, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Why hadn't I told them? The answer was complicated, layered with years of feeling overlooked, of conversations that never quite reached the depth of my military service, of achievements that seemed to pale in comparison to Marcus's academic success. "I tried," I said quietly, then found my voice growing stronger. "I mentioned the review board last month. I talked about the commendations from my commanding officers. But every conversation seemed to drift back to other things." My mother's face had gone pale. She stood frozen beside my father, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The party guests watched in fascination as our family drama played out in real time. Admiral Hawthorne, sensing the tension, smoothly intervened. "Captain Rodriguez has been remarkably humble about her achievements. The optimization protocols she developed have been adopted fleet-wide. She's saved the Navy millions of dollars in operational costs while improving response times by 30%. She turned to address the crowd more broadly. "The Logistics Division isn't just about moving supplies. It's about ensuring that every sailor, every ship, every mission has exactly what it needs when it needs it. Captain Rodriguez has revolutionized how we think about supply chain management in naval operations." My father cleared his throat, his businessman's instincts kicking in. "Admiral, we had no idea Sarah's work was so significant. We're incredibly proud of her." But Admiral Hawthorne wasn't finished. "The promotion to captain at her age is extraordinary. Most officers take 15 to 20 years to reach this rank. Captain Rodriguez has done it in 8, based purely on merit and exceptional performance." The numbers seemed to register with the crowd. I could see relatives doing quick mental math, realizing that my military career had been more successful than they'd understood. Conversations began to bubble up around the edges of the gathering as people processed this new information. "There's something else," Admiral Hawthorne continued, producing another document from her jacket. "Captain Rodriguez has been selected for the Navy's Advanced Leadership Program. She'll be working directly with Pentagon officials on strategic planning initiatives." The Pentagon, the words seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet backyard. Even Marcus looked impressed, his MBA achievement suddenly feeling like one milestone among many, rather than the singular focus of the day. Admiral Hawthorne's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it briefly. "I apologize, but I need to take this call. It's from Admiral Chen." She stepped away from the crowd, speaking in low, urgent tones. In her absence, the party guests began to approach me. Aunt Patricia, who'd barely spoken to me in years, suddenly wanted to know all about my military service. Uncle Tom, a veteran himself, shook my hand with genuine respect. Even Marcus's college friends seemed curious about my career path. But it was my grandmother who surprised me most. She walked over slowly, her cane tapping against the patio stones. "Sarah dear," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her 92 years. "I've been waiting for this moment since you enlisted." "Waiting for what, Grandma?" "For your family to see what I've seen all along. You've got the heart of a warrior, child, always have. Even when you were little, you never backed down from a challenge. She patted my hand gently. Your grandfather would be so proud. He always said the military would make something special of you. Admiral Hawthorne returned, her expression serious. Captain Rodriguez, I need to discuss something with you privately. It's regarding your new assignment. We walked away from the crowd, toward the edge of the backyard where my parents had planted a small garden. The sounds of the party continued behind us, but they felt distant now, like background music to a more important conversation. The call from Admiral Chen brings complications, she said. Your promotion comes with an immediate transfer timeline. You'll need to report to Pearl Harbor within 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The reality of the situation began to sink in. I'd be leaving San Diego, leaving California, leaving everything familiar behind, but instead of fear, I felt excitement building in my chest. There's more, Admiral Hawthorne continued. The position comes with a significant increase in responsibility. You'll be overseeing not just logistics for Pearl Harbor, but coordinating supply chains for the entire Pacific Fleet. It's a challenging assignment, but one that could fast-track your career even further. She paused, studying my face. Are you ready for this, Captain? The question felt like a test, but I knew the answer without hesitation. Yes, Admiral, I'm ready. Good. Because the Navy needs officers like you. Officers who can see the big picture, who understand that every detail matters, who can lead under pressure. She smiled slightly. Your family seems to be realizing what the Navy has known for years, that you're destined for great things. As we walked back toward the party, I could see the dynamic had shifted. The celebration was no longer solely about Marcus's graduation. Conversations were happening in clusters, and I caught snippets about military service, about career paths, about the pride of having a captain in the family. Marcus appeared at my side, his graduation cap now completely straight. Sarah, I owe you an apology. I had no idea your career was so impressive. I've been so focused on my own path that I missed what was happening with yours. His words carried genuine regret, and I felt some of the tension between us beginning to ease. We've both been building our futures, Marcus, just in different ways. But your way seems a lot more important than mine, he said with a rueful smile. I'm going to help people make money. You're helping protect the country. Before I could respond, my parents approached. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and my father looked like he was struggling to find the right words. Sarah, my mother began, her voice shaking slightly, we need to talk. My parents led me away from the party, toward the small study where my father handled his business calls. The room felt cramped with the 3 of us inside, surrounded by file cabinets and framed certificates from Dad's accounting firm. Mom closed the door behind us, muffling the sounds of celebration from the backyard. We failed you, my mother said without preamble, tears streaming down her face. We completely failed you as parents. The words hung heavy in the air. I'd never seen my mother this vulnerable, this raw. She was always the one who held everything together, who made sure every detail was perfect, who never let cracks show in the family facade. Mom, that's not… No, Sarah, let me finish. She sat down heavily in my father's desk chair, her elegant party dress suddenly seeming too formal for the moment. We've been so focused on Marcus's achievements that we completely overlooked yours. We didn't even know about your promotion. Our own daughter makes captain in the Navy, and we're finding out from a stranger. My father leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. I keep replaying conversations in my head. All the times you tried to tell us about your work, about your recognition, about the challenges you were facing, and we brushed it off or changed the subject. The honesty in his voice was painful to hear. These weren't accusations or arguments, they were confessions. When you first enlisted, Mom continued, I thought it was just a phase, a way to find direction after community college. I never understood that you were building a career, a life, something important. You were achieving things we couldn't even comprehend, Dad added. And instead of learning about your world, we kept trying to pull you back into ours. The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Marcus peeked in, his graduation cap now completely forgotten. Sorry to interrupt, but Admiral Hawthorne is asking for Sarah. She says it's important. We returned to the backyard to find Admiral Hawthorne speaking with several of my relatives. She'd somehow managed to transform what could have been an awkward situation into an impromptu military appreciation gathering. Uncle Tom was showing her his old Army photos on his phone, while my cousin Jennifer peppered her with questions about women in the military. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Hawthorne said as I approached, "I've been sharing some stories about your exceptional work. Your family seems quite interested in learning more about your career." Aunt Patricia stepped forward, her expression earnest. "Sarah, I had no idea the Navy was so complex." Admiral Hawthorne was explaining how supply chain logistics affects global security. "It sounds incredibly important." "It is," I replied, still processing the emotional conversation with my parents. Every piece of equipment, every meal, every spare part. It all has to be in the right place at the right time. When sailors are deployed thousands of miles from home, they depend on that system working perfectly. "Tell them about the typhoon response," Admiral Hawthorne suggested with an encouraging nod. I hesitated for a moment, then began describing the crisis that had tested our entire Pacific Fleet logistics network 6 months earlier. When Typhoon Kai threatened to devastate the Philippines, we'd had less than 48 hours to coordinate relief supplies, medical equipment, and personnel across multiple bases. The scale of the operation was staggering: hundreds of flights, dozens of ships, thousands of tons of supplies. The challenge wasn't just moving the supplies, I explained, warming to the subject. It was predicting what would be needed where, accounting for damaged infrastructure, coordinating with civilian authorities, and doing it all while the storm was still active. My grandmother, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "How many people did you help save, dear?" The question caught me off guard. I'd never thought about it in those terms. The official estimate was around 50,000 people received direct aid from our relief efforts. But the medical supplies we delivered probably saved thousands more. The number seemed to resonate with the crowd. I could see family members processing this information, beginning to understand the scope of what I did every day. "There's something else your family should know," Admiral Hawthorne interjected. "Captain Rodriguez's innovation in supply chain management has been studied by NATO allies. Her protocols are being implemented by military forces around the world." My college-aged cousin Jake, who'd been quiet until now, suddenly looked fascinated. "Wait, so other countries are using systems you created?" "Modified versions," I clarified. "But yes, the basic framework has been adapted by several allied nations." Admiral Hawthorne's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then excused herself for another call. As she walked away, I noticed the party had completely transformed. What had started as Marcus's graduation celebration had become something entirely different. A discovery session about my military career that my family had never bothered to explore. Marcus appeared at my side, still in his cap and gown but now looking slightly uncomfortable. "Sarah, I feel like I should apologize for everything. This was supposed to be my day, but you're the one with the truly impressive achievements." "Marcus, don't..." "No, I need to say this. I've been jealous of your clarity, your sense of purpose. I'm getting an MBA because it seemed like the logical next step, but I'm not passionate about it. You found something you love, something that matters, and you've excelled at it." His honesty surprised me. I didn't know you felt that way. "I've been watching you today, seeing how you explain your work, how you light up when you talk about solving complex problems. I don't have that. I'm good at business school, but I don't have a calling the way you do." Before I could respond, Admiral Hawthorne returned, her expression more serious than before. "Captain Rodriguez, I need to discuss something with you immediately. Is there somewhere private we can talk?" We walked to the front of the house, away from the party noise. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. "That call was from Washington," she said without preamble. "Your Pearl Harbor assignment has been accelerated. There's been a development in the South China Sea that's requiring immediate strategic response." My stomach tightened. "What kind of development?" "The details are classified, but it involves supply chain disruptions that could affect multiple allied nations. Your expertise in crisis logistics makes you essential to the response team. You'll need to report to Pearl Harbor within 1 week, not 3. 1 week. The timeline felt impossible. I'd need to pack up my entire life, arrange for my apartment, transfer my belongings, and mentally prepare for one of the most challenging assignments of my career. Captain, I know this is sudden, but the Navy is counting on you. Admiral Chen specifically requested your immediate deployment. He believes your innovative approaches to supply chain management could be crucial to maintaining stability in the region. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about national security, about maintaining peace in one of the world's most volatile regions. I understand, Admiral. I'll be ready. There's one more thing. Due to the classified nature of this assignment, you won't be able to discuss the details with anyone, including your family. They'll know you're stationed at Pearl Harbor, but the specific nature of your work will need to remain confidential. As we walked back toward the party, I realized my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. The family celebration that had started with me feeling invisible was ending with me facing one of the most significant challenges of my military career. The backyard was alive with conversation as we rejoined the group. My parents were deep in discussion with Uncle Tom about military service, while my cousins were asking detailed questions about life on a naval base. The entire dynamic had shifted from celebration to education. "Everyone," Admiral Hawthorne announced, "I'm afraid I need to steal Captain Rodriguez for a few more minutes. There are some final details about her new assignment that we need to discuss." But as she led me away from the crowd, I caught sight of something that made my heart stop. There at the family table, someone had placed a chair with a handwritten name card, Captain Sarah Rodriguez. My mother stood beside it, tears in her eyes, gesturing for me to take my seat at the family table where I'd always belonged. The sight of my name card on the family table hit me harder than any military ceremony ever had. My mother's gesture, simple as it was, represented everything I'd been missing for years. Recognition. Belonging. A place at the table that was rightfully mine. But Admiral Hawthorne's urgent tone reminded me that this moment of family reconciliation was happening at the most complicated time possible. As I sat down in the chair my mother had prepared, I felt the weight of the classified assignment pressing against my chest like a physical burden. "I wish I could stay longer," I said to my family, trying to keep my voice steady, "but my deployment timeline has changed. I'll be leaving for Pearl Harbor much sooner than expected." My father leaned forward, his businessman's instincts engaging. "How soon? We need to help you prepare, arrange things." "1 week," I said quietly. The table fell silent. Even Marcus, who'd been energized by the party's transformation, looked stunned. 1 week to say goodbye to everything familiar, to pack up a life I'd built over 2 years, to mentally prepare for an assignment I couldn't even discuss with the people I loved most. "That's impossible," my mother said, her voice rising slightly. "You can't pack up your entire life in a week. What about your apartment, your belongings, your friends?" Admiral Hawthorne, who'd been observing the family dynamics with professional interest, stepped in. "Mrs. Rodriguez, the Navy will handle all logistical arrangements. Captain Rodriguez will have full support for her relocation." "But we just found out about her promotion," my grandmother said, her voice carrying a note of indignation that made everyone turn to look at her. "We just learned who our Sarah really is, and now she's being taken away from us?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to forces beyond our control. For the first time in my life, I felt my family rallying around me. Not because of what I might become, but because of who I already was. "The timing is unfortunate," Admiral Hawthorne acknowledged, "but Captain Rodriguez's skills are needed for a critical operation. Her expertise could help prevent a significant international crisis." Uncle Tom, who'd been quiet during most of the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "International crisis? What kind of crisis?" "I am not at liberty to discuss the details," Admiral Hawthorne replied smoothly. "But I can say that Captain Rodriguez's innovative approach to supply chain logistics has caught the attention of the highest levels of command." My cousin Jennifer, who worked as a journalist for the local newspaper, leaned forward with obvious interest. "Sarah, can you tell us anything about what you'll be doing in Hawaii?" I felt the constraints of military protocol settling around me like a cage. "I'll be overseeing logistics operations for the Pacific Fleet. Beyond that, I can't discuss specifics." The reality of my situation was becoming clear to my family. I was being deployed to handle something serious enough to require immediate action, but classified enough that I couldn't share it with the people who cared about me most. Marcus, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly stood up. "I have an idea. What if we moved the celebration?" Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "I mean, what if we made this week about Sarah instead of about my graduation? She's the one facing the real challenge. She's the one who needs our support." The suggestion caught me completely off guard. "Marcus, this is your party. You've earned this celebration. And you've earned recognition that you've never received," he replied firmly. "My graduation will still be there next week. Your deployment won't wait." Admiral Hawthorne watched this exchange with growing interest. "Captain Rodriguez, your family's support will be crucial in the coming months. Long-term deployments can be challenging, especially when the work is classified." "How long will she be gone?" my father asked. "The initial assignment is for 18 months, Admiral Hawthorne replied. "But given the nature of the work, it could be extended." 18 months. The number seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet backyard. 18 months of managing critical operations while being unable to share the details with my family. 18 months of building a new life in Hawaii while trying to maintain connections to home. "That's not just a deployment," my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's like starting over completely." "In many ways, it is," Admiral Hawthorne agreed. "But Captain Rodriguez will be working at the highest levels of naval operations. The experience will be invaluable for her career advancement." My grandmother reached across the table and took my hand. "Sarah dear, I lived through your grandfather's deployment to Korea. I know what it's like to love someone who serves their country. It's not easy, but it's worth it." Her words carried the weight of experience, of sacrifice, of understanding that came from decades of military life. "How did you manage, Grandma?" "By remembering that what he was doing mattered more than what I was missing," she said simply, "and by staying connected to the parts of him that I could reach." Admiral Hawthorne's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Captain Rodriguez? I need to speak with you privately once more. There's been another development." We walked to the front yard again, but this time I felt different. The support of my family, the recognition of my achievements, the knowledge that I finally had a place at their table, it all gave me strength I hadn't realized I was missing. "The situation in the South China Sea has escalated," Admiral Hawthorne said without preamble. "What started as a supply chain disruption now appears to be a coordinated effort to test our response capabilities." My blood ran cold. "Are we talking about military action?" "Not yet, but the potential is there. Your job will be to ensure that our forces remain fully supplied and ready to respond to any scenario. The logistics network you'll be managing could be the difference between peaceful resolution and something much more serious." The weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. "Admiral, I'm honored by the confidence, but—" "Captain Rodriguez, there's no but here. You've proven yourself capable of handling complex crisis situations. The Typhoon response was just practice for this level of operation." She pulled out her phone and showed me a map with dozens of red dots scattered across the Pacific. Each of these represents a supply depot, a naval base, or a strategic asset that needs to be coordinated. Your job is to ensure that every single one remains operational and ready for immediate deployment. The scope of the assignment was staggering. I was being asked to manage the logistics for what could potentially become the largest military operation in the Pacific since World War II. "There's one more thing," Admiral Hawthorne continued. "Due to the sensitive nature of this assignment, you'll be working directly with intelligence agencies. Your security clearance is being upgraded to the highest levels." Intelligence agencies. The words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about moving supplies anymore. It was about national security at the highest levels. "I understand, Admiral. I'm ready." "Good. Because in 1 week, you'll be briefed on details that could affect the balance of power in the entire Pacific region." As we walked back toward the party, I realized that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. The family celebration that had started with me feeling invisible was ending with me facing one of the most significant challenges in modern military history. The backyard was buzzing with a different kind of energy now. My family had moved beyond recognition to something deeper, understanding and pride, mixed with concern for what lay ahead. "Is everything all right?" my mother asked as we rejoined the group. I looked around at the faces of my family, finally seeing myself reflected in their eyes not as the overlooked daughter, but as Captain Sarah Rodriguez, someone whose work mattered on a global scale. "Hi, Oli. Everything's going to be fine, Mom, but I think we need to make the most of this week." The next morning, my phone rang at 0530 hours. Admiral Hawthorne's voice was crisp and urgent. "Captain Rodriguez, report to Naval Base San Diego immediately. Your briefing schedule has been moved up." I threw on my uniform and drove through the empty streets of San Diego, my mind racing with possibilities. The base at dawn had an otherworldly quality. Shadows stretching across empty parking lots, the distant sound of morning reveille, the American flag snapping in the Pacific breeze. Admiral Hawthorne met me at the security checkpoint, her expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. "Captain, what I'm about to show you cannot leave this building. You'll be signing documents that commit you to lifelong secrecy about certain aspects of your assignment." We walked through corridors I'd never seen before, past doors marked with classifications I didn't recognize. Finally, we entered a windowless conference room where 3 people were waiting. Admiral Chen, whom I recognized from photographs, a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself only as Agent Morrison, and a man in Air Force uniform with stars on his shoulders. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Chen said, standing as I entered, "your reputation precedes you. Agent Morrison has been reviewing your typhoon response protocols. General Patterson here represents the Joint Operations Command." Agent Morrison gestured to a chair across from a bank of monitors. "Captain, what you're about to see has been classified at the highest levels. The situation in the South China Sea is more complex than we initially briefed you." The main screen flickered to life, showing satellite imagery of the disputed waters. Red markers indicated military installations, shipping lanes, and what appeared to be a massive buildup of naval assets. "3 weeks ago," Agent Morrison continued, "we detected unusual patterns in commercial shipping. Vessels carrying critical materials, rare earth metals, advanced semiconductors, medical supplies, began experiencing systematic delays." General Patterson leaned forward. "At first, we thought it was coincidental. Supply chain disruptions happen. But the pattern was too precise, too coordinated." "Someone is testing our response capabilities," Admiral Chen said grimly. "They're creating artificial shortages to see how we adapt our logistics networks." The implications hit me immediately. They're mapping our supply chains, learning our vulnerabilities. "Exactly," Agent Morrison said with approval. "And that's where you come in. Your innovation in crisis logistics makes you unpredictable. Your protocols don't follow traditional military doctrine." Admiral Chen pulled up another screen, showing a complex web of shipping routes and supply depots. "Captain Rodriguez, your assignment isn't just to manage Pacific Fleet logistics. You're going to redesign the entire system to be unpredictable. We need supply chains that can't be mapped or disrupted by hostile forces." The scope of what they were asking seemed impossible. "Admiral, redesigning the entire Pacific logistics network while maintaining operational readiness. That's like rebuilding a plane while it's flying." "That's exactly what we need," General Patterson said. "Traditional logistics rely on efficiency and predictability, but predictability has become our weakness. We need chaos that only you can control." Agent Morrison activated another screen showing personnel files. "You'll be working with a hand-picked team of specialists. Mathematicians, computer scientists, former intelligence operatives who understand asymmetric warfare." I studied the faces on the screen. Dr. Elena Vasquez, MIT graduate in computational logistics. Commander James Wright, former Navy SEAL with expertise in unconventional operations. Dr. Kevin Liu, systems analyst who'd worked on classified Pentagon projects. "Your team will be embedded within normal Pearl Harbor operations," Admiral Chen explained. "But your real work will happen in a secure facility that officially doesn't exist." "Captain," Agent Morrison said, her voice taking on a different tone, "I need you to understand what you're accepting. This assignment will isolate you from normal military career paths. Your work will be so classified that most of your achievements will never be publicly recognized." The weight of her words settled over me. I was being offered the chance to serve at the highest levels of national security, but at the cost of ever receiving public recognition for my work. No promotions that my family could celebrate, no achievements they could understand. "There's something else," General Patterson said. "Your family relationships will be monitored for security purposes. Your communications will be limited and screened. The normal support systems for deployed military personnel won't be available to you." I thought about my family's reaction yesterday, their newfound pride in my achievements, their desire to finally understand my work. Now I was being asked to disappear into a world they could never access. "How long would this assignment last?" I asked. "Minimum of 3 years," Admiral Chen replied. "Possibly longer, depending on how the situation develops." 3 years of isolation. 3 years of work that couldn't be shared or celebrated. 3 years of serving my country in ways that would remain invisible to the people I loved most. "I need to ask," I said carefully, "what happens if I decline this assignment?" Agent Morrison's expression didn't change. "You'd return to normal naval logistics operations. Your promotion to captain stands, but your career trajectory would be conventional." The choice was clear. I could have a normal military career with regular recognition and family support, or I could serve at the highest levels of national security in complete secrecy. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Chen said, "I want you to understand something. The work you'd be doing could prevent a major Pacific war. The logistics systems you develop might be the difference between regional stability and global conflict." General Patterson pulled up a final screen showing economic projections. If hostile forces succeed in disrupting Pacific trade routes, the global economy could collapse. We're talking about potential humanitarian crisis affecting billions of people. The numbers were staggering. Billions of dollars in trade, millions of jobs, entire nations dependent on the flow of goods across Pacific shipping lanes. My work wouldn't just support military operations. It would protect the economic foundation of half the world. "I need to know your decision by 1800 hours today," Agent Morrison said. "If you accept, you'll leave for Pearl Harbor tomorrow. Your cover story will be the standard logistics assignment we discussed yesterday." As the meeting concluded, Admiral Hawthorne walked me back through the corridors. "Sarah, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, but I want you to understand what you're giving up." "What do you mean?" "Normal relationships. Regular communication with family. The ability to share your work with people who care about you. Traditional career advancement that others can witness and celebrate." We stopped outside the building, in the morning sunlight that felt surreal after the windowless conference room. "But you'd also be serving your country in ways that most military personnel never get the chance to do." I thought about my family's reaction yesterday, their pride and excitement about finally understanding my career. Now I was facing the possibility of disappearing into work they could never know about, achievements they could never celebrate. "Admiral, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever regret the sacrifices your career required?" She was quiet for a long moment, watching the flags snap in the Pacific breeze. "Every military career requires sacrifice, Sarah. The question is whether the sacrifice serves something larger than yourself." As I drove home to my apartment, I knew I had the most important decision of my life to make. Accept the assignment and disappear into classified work that could help prevent global conflict, or choose a conventional career path that would allow me to maintain the family relationships I'd just begun to rebuild. I had until 1,800 hours to decide between serving my country and serving my family's need to understand and celebrate my achievements. The hardest part was knowing that whichever choice I made, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering about the path not taken. I sat in my apartment for 3 hours, staring at the official documents spread across my kitchen table. The assignment papers, the security clearance forms, the non-disclosure agreements that would essentially erase me from normal military recognition for the next 3 years. Outside my window, San Diego carried on with its usual Sunday rhythm. Families heading to brunch, joggers along the harbor, couples walking their dogs. At 1,300 hours, I made a decision that surprised even me. I picked up my phone and called my father. "Dad, I need to talk to the family. All of them. Can you get everyone together at your house in an hour?" "Of course, sweetheart. Is everything all right?" "I'll explain when I get there." When I arrived at my parents' house, the entire extended family was waiting in the living room. My parents, Marcus, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who'd been at yesterday's party. They looked concerned, uncertain about why I'd called this emergency gathering. I need to tell you something important, I began, standing in front of the fireplace where family photos chronicled decades of celebrations I'd often felt excluded from. Yesterday was the first time I felt like I truly belonged in this family. For the first time you saw me for who I really am. My mother's eyes were already welling up with tears. Sarah, what's happening? I've been offered an assignment that would take me away for at least 3 years. It's classified work that I can't discuss with anyone, including all of you. I wouldn't be able to share my achievements, my challenges, or even basic details about what I'm doing. The room fell silent. My grandmother was the first to speak. This is about that crisis Admiral Hawthorne mentioned, isn't it? I can't discuss the details, Grandma, but yes, it's related to that situation. Uncle Tom leaned forward. Sarah, are you asking for our advice, or are you telling us you've already decided? The question cut straight to the heart of the matter. I'm asking for your advice. Yesterday, for the first time in my life, I felt like my family truly understood and supported my career. Now I'm facing the possibility of disappearing into work you'll never be able to understand or celebrate. Marcus stood up and began pacing, his business school training apparently kicking in. Okay, let's think about this logically. What are the career implications of each choice? If I take the conventional assignment, I'll have a normal Navy career with regular promotions and recognition. If I take the classified assignment, my work will be invisible, but I'll be serving at the highest levels of national security. What does your gut tell you? My cousin Jennifer asked. My gut tells me that the classified work could help prevent something catastrophic. But my heart tells me that I just found my place in this family, and I don't want to lose it again. My father had been quiet throughout the conversation, but now he cleared his throat. Sarah, can I share something with you? Something I've never told anyone in this room? Everyone turned to look at him with surprise. Dad wasn't known for dramatic revelations. When I was your age, I was offered a position with an international accounting firm. It would have meant traveling constantly, being away from home for months at a time, working on projects I couldn't discuss because of client confidentiality. The money was incredible, the prestige was everything I'd worked for. He paused, looking around the room at his family. I turned it down because I wanted to be present for my children's lives. I wanted to coach Little League, attend school plays, be at every important moment. Dad, you never told us about that, Marcus said quietly. Because I've spent 30 years wondering if I made the right choice. I built a good life, a comfortable practice, raised 2 children I'm proud of. But I also know that the work I turned down might have made a difference on a global scale. He looked directly at me. Sarah, you're facing the same choice I faced, but with much higher stakes. My grandmother suddenly spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of her 92 years. Children, may I tell you about the choice your grandfather faced in 1951? The room fell silent. Grandma rarely talked about Grandpa's military service in detail. He was offered a position with military intelligence that would have required him to disappear for years. Officially, he would have been stationed in Germany. Unofficially, he would have been working throughout Eastern Europe during the height of the Cold War. She paused, her hands folded in her lap. He turned it down because I was pregnant with your father, and he didn't want to miss his son's childhood. Grandpa never told us about that, my mother said softly. Because he carried the weight of that decision for the rest of his life. He wondered if his intelligence work might have helped end the Cold War sooner, might have saved lives, might have changed history. She looked at me with eyes that had seen decades of difficult choices. But he also got to raise his son, to be present for his family, to build relationships that sustained him through his final years. The parallel was unmistakable. 3 generations of our family had faced variations of the same impossible choice between service and family. Grandma, I said quietly, do you think he made the right choice? I think he made the choice he could live with, and that's what you need to do, dear. My cousin Jake, who'd been quiet throughout the conversation, suddenly spoke up. Sarah, can I ask you something? If you don't take this assignment, will someone else do the work? Yes, but you think you're uniquely qualified to do it better? The question forced me to confront my own ego. Yes, I do think I'm the best person for this job. Then maybe the question isn't about what you want, but about what the world needs. His words hung in the air like a challenge. At 22, my youngest cousin had somehow cut through all the emotional complexity to reach the core issue. Marcus rejoined the conversation. Sarah, yesterday I realized that my career path is about personal advancement. Yours is about service. Maybe that distinction matters here. What do you mean? I mean that turning down a promotion at Goldman Sachs might affect my bank account, but it won't affect global security. The stakes of your choice are fundamentally different. My mother, who'd been crying quietly throughout the conversation, finally spoke. Sarah, we just found you. We just learned who you really are. The thought of losing you to work we can't understand or support is terrifying. But Mom, my father interjected gently, maybe supporting her means encouraging her to do work that matters, even if we can't be part of it. The conversation continued for another hour, but I could feel the family consensus emerging. Despite their fear of losing me again, despite their desire to finally be part of my achievements, they understood that some choices transcend personal preferences. At 1,700 hours, I looked around the room at the faces of my family, people who had finally learned to see me clearly, just in time to potentially lose me to classified work they'd never understand. I need to make a phone call, I said, stepping onto the back patio, where this entire journey had begun less than 24 hours earlier. Admiral Hawthorne answered on the first ring. Captain Rodriguez, have you reached a decision? I looked back through the sliding glass door at my family, all watching me with expressions of love, fear, and pride. Yes, Admiral, I accept the assignment. The words felt both inevitable and devastating. In choosing to serve my country at the highest level, I was choosing to disappear from the family relationships I'd just begun to rebuild. Excellent, Captain. Report to Naval Base San Diego at 0600 tomorrow for immediate transport to Pearl Harbor. Your cover story is already in place. As I hung up the phone, I realized that my choice would define not just my career, but my entire understanding of what it means to serve something larger than yourself. The next morning arrived with the kind of Pacific dawn that makes San Diego feel like paradise. Golden lights streaming across the harbor, seagulls crying in the distance, the promise of another perfect California day. But I was already dressed in my service uniform, my single duffel bag packed with the few personal items I was allowed to bring to my new life. My family had insisted on driving me to the naval base for my departure. The car ride was unusually quiet, filled with the kind of silence that comes when everyone has too much to say and no idea how to say it. My mother kept reaching back from the passenger seat to squeeze my hand, as if physical contact could somehow bridge the gap that my classified assignment was about to create. At the security gate, we faced the reality that this was as far as they could go. The secure area beyond was a world they couldn't enter, couldn't understand, couldn't be part of. It was a metaphor for the next 3 years of our relationship. Before you go, my father said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket, we wanted you to have this. Inside was a photograph from yesterday's party, the moment when Admiral Hawthorne had first asked about Captain Rodriguez. But someone had also included a handwritten letter signed by every family member who'd been there. Sarah, the letter began, we know we can't be part of the work you're about to do, but we want you to know that we'll be part of the pride you earn doing it. For years, we failed to see the hero you were becoming. Now that we see clearly, we're not going to let classification levels or security clearances diminish our understanding of who you are. My cousin Jennifer had added a postscript. We've started a family tradition. Every Sunday dinner, we're going to share one thing we learned about military service, about logistics, about the sacrifices people make for national security. By the time you come home, we'll finally be educated enough to deserve you. The gesture hit me harder than any military ceremony ever had. My family was choosing to bridge the gap my classified work would create by educating themselves about my world, even if they couldn't know the specifics of my contributions. There's something else, Marcus said, handing me a small wrapped package. I know you can't tell us about your achievements over the next 3 years, so I wanted to give you something to represent all the celebrations we won't be able to have. Inside was a simple silver pendant, a compass rose with the inscription, Captain Sarah Rodriguez, our hero, always. Marcus, I can't. Yes, you can. Because every time you look at it, you'll remember that somewhere in San Diego, Your family is proud of work they can't understand, celebrating achievements they can't witness, and counting the days until you come home. Admiral Hawthorne appeared at the security checkpoint, her presence a reminder that my new reality was beginning. Captain Rodriguez, it's time. The goodbyes were harder than I'd expected. My grandmother held my face in her hands and whispered, "Your grandfather would be so proud." "Make choices you can live with, dear." My mother's tears were silent but steady. 3 years feels like forever, but we'll be here when you get back, all of us. As I walked through the security gate, I turned back once to see my family standing together, watching me disappear into a world they couldn't follow. For the first time in my life, I felt their complete support and understanding, just as I was about to leave it behind. The flight to Pearl Harbor gave me 6 hours to process what I was walking into. Admiral Hawthorne had provided me with preliminary briefing materials, maps, personnel files, technical specifications for systems I'd be redesigning. The scope of the work was overwhelming but also exhilarating. Dr. Elena Vasquez met me at Honolulu International Airport. She was younger than I'd expected, with the intense focus of someone who lived inside complex mathematical problems. "Captain Rodriguez, I'm Elena. Welcome to the most challenging assignment of your career." The drive to Pearl Harbor took us through Honolulu traffic, past tourists heading to beaches, and families going about their normal Sunday routines. It felt surreal to be surrounded by vacation paradise while heading into work that could affect global security. "I should warn you," Elena said as we approached the base, "the facility where we'll be working doesn't officially exist. Your family, your friends, even most military personnel will think you're doing routine logistics coordination." She pointed to a building that looked like standard base administration. "Our real workspace is 3 levels underground. No windows, no cell phone signals, no connection to the outside world except through official channels." Pearl Harbor itself was exactly what I'd imagined: historic, imposing, filled with the weight of American naval history. But knowing that my work here would be invisible made the experience bittersweet. I was walking in the footsteps of heroes whose stories could be told, while mine would remain forever classified. Commander Wright was waiting in the underground facility, along with Dr. Liu and 2 other team members I hadn't met before. The workspace looked like something from a science fiction movie: multiple screens showing global shipping data, communication arrays, secure workstations arranged around a central planning area. "Captain Rodriguez," Commander Wright said, extending his hand, "your reputation for innovative crisis management is exactly what we need here." Dr. Liu activated the main display, showing real-time shipping data across the Pacific. "What you're looking at is the most comprehensive logistics monitoring system ever created. Every commercial vessel, every military supply ship, every critical cargo movement is tracked here." The complexity was staggering. Thousands of vessels moving across millions of square miles of ocean, carrying everything from food to fuel to advanced military equipment. Managing this system required thinking on a scale I'd never encountered. "Your job," Elena explained, "is to make this system unpredictable while keeping it efficient. We need to create controlled chaos that serves our purposes while appearing random to hostile surveillance." Commander Wright pulled up classified intelligence reports. "We've identified the source of the systematic disruptions. It's more sophisticated than we initially realized, and it's accelerating." Over the next several hours, they briefed me on details that redefined my understanding of modern warfare. The conflict wasn't happening with missiles or troops. It was happening in shipping schedules, supply chain algorithms, and the invisible networks that kept global commerce functioning. "Captain," Dr. Lau said as the briefing concluded, "the work we do in this room over the next 3 years could determine whether the Pacific remains stable or descends into economic warfare that affects billions of people." That night, alone in my temporary quarters, I video-called my family. The conversation was awkward, constrained by the knowledge that everything was being monitored and recorded. We talked about the weather, about Marcus's job search, about family gossip that felt trivial compared to the weight of my assignment. But at the end of the call, my mother said something that stayed with me. "Sarah, we know we can't understand your work, but we understand you, and that's enough." 3 months later, I was deep into the most complex logistical challenge of my career. Our team had redesigned Pacific Fleet supply chains to be simultaneously more efficient and completely unpredictable. We'd created systems that looked chaotic from the outside but followed patterns only we could control. The work was exhausting, isolating, and absolutely critical. Every day brought new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to prevent conflicts that could reshape global politics. I was serving my country in ways I'd never imagined possible. But every Sunday, I received the same email from my family: updates on their military education project, photos from their weekly dinners, reminders that somewhere in San Diego, people who loved me were working to understand my world even though they couldn't be part of it. The compass rose pendant Marcus had given me became my anchor. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that choosing to serve something larger than yourself doesn't mean abandoning the people who matter most. It means trusting them to support you across distances and silences they can't cross themselves. 6 months into my assignment, Admiral Chen visited our facility. "Captain Rodriguez, your innovations have exceeded every expectation. The supply chain disruptions have stopped. The hostile testing has moved to other regions where they're encountering conventional responses they can predict and counter. Sir, the team deserves credit for. Captain, the team follows your lead. Your ability to think outside traditional logistics doctrine has given us advantages we didn't know were possible." As he prepared to leave, Admiral Chen turned back with a slight smile. "By the way, your family has been remarkably persistent in their requests for general information about logistics careers. Your mother has become quite the expert on supply chain management theory." The thought of my mother researching military logistics to better understand my work brought tears to my eyes. Even separated by classification levels and thousands of miles, my family had found a way to close the gap between my service and their support. Standing in that underground facility, surrounded by screens showing the peaceful flow of commerce across the Pacific, I realized I'd found something I'd been searching for my entire life. Not just recognition or belonging, but the knowledge that my work mattered on a scale that transcended personal achievement. I was Captain Sarah Rodriguez, guardian of systems that most people would never know existed, protector of peace through work that would never be celebrated, servant of a mission larger than any individual recognition. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.